Hello and welcome to this general introduction to 4 plays by Terence that we're looking at in 4 separate videos, but the introduction to those videos is going to be exactly the same, and in a moment there will be an awkward crossover to where the bit we read of the plays. These are all just the openings of plays. We're just going to test the waters, because the problem with the Terence translations that we're looking at, in theory they're all translated by Richard Bernard, or Bernard, I don't know, it's a surname, I go for Bernard. They're all published in 1598, and we did one recently and it was rubbish, and so we want to know whether A, he's the author of the translation, and which case it's rubbish, or if he's just stolen somebody else's, in which case it might turn out to be quite good. If the text turns out to be quite good, we will read the rest of the play at some point in the future. If it turns out to be rubbish, we will say we've done due diligence, this isn't an actionable play, and we won't attempt to action it. So we have reading in the room. We have Alan, we have Aliki, we have Eric, we have Lynn, and now awkward jump cut as we go to, which is Hecyra, or if we want to go full 1970s stand-up comic, The Mother-in-Law. Always a reassuring title. Again, translated by Richard Bernard from Terence, and we are looking, as ever, for not so much the question of whether Terence is any good. I have thoughts about whether Terence is actually any good, but whether this translation is performable, or whether it is more on the academic exercise bandwidth of usability. Once again, we open the play with some people saying words, and so we're going to start. I'll ask Lynn if you could be Hecyra, an old woman, if Aliki, you could be Freitas the strumpet. Already a good start so far. Let's see where this goes, and enter Freitas and Hecyra.
In faith, Hecyra, you can find very few lovers which prove faithful to their paramours. For even this Pamphilus, how often did he swear deeply by no beggars unto Bacchus, even so that anybody in the world might have believed him, that so long as she lived he would not take him a wife, but lo, he is married.
Therefore, both I carefully warn and exhort you to take pity of none, but make havoc, diminish, and bring them to poverty, whomsoever you can get.
What will you, that I should have no respect of persons?
For you may know very well that not any of them come to you, but they prepare themselves by flattering speeches to take their pleasure of you for a small matter. And I pray you will not seek to beguile such as they be.
Notwithstanding, it is great injury to serve them all after one sword.
Is it injury to be revenged of one's enemies? Or is it injury that they themselves be taken by the same way by which they endeavor to deceive others? Alas, poor soul that I am! Why am not I as young and as favored as you, or you of this mind that I am of?
Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Parmeno, read by Eric, who is a servant to Freitas and Hecyra.
If the old man seek me termed, I'm now gone to the haven side to inquire if Pamphilus coming. Do you understand what I say, Skirtus? If he ask for me, tell him the same. But if he do not, say nothing to the end. I may excuse myself another time with it. But do I not see Freitas? From whence comes she? Freitas, good morrow, heartily.
Oh, Parmeno, God save you.
God bless thee, Parmeno.
And you also, in truth. Hecyra, tell me, I pray you, Freitas, where have you solaced yourself all this long while?
Truly, I have taken small pleasure, which went from hence to Corinth with a most unkind and churlish captain, and there have I suffered many things of him, poor wretch that I am, for 2 whole years' space.
I suppose, Freitas, verily you wished often that you were at Athens, and did repent of your device.
It can be told by word of mouth how desirous I was to return hither again, and to go from the night, and to see you, that I might, according to our old accustomed manner, freely make merry amongst you and with you. Further, I was allowed to say nothing but which he list and that liked him.
I think that the knight hath not made a friend of his tale.
But to what end is all this which Bacchus told me within erewhile, even which I never thought would have happened, to wit, that he could once think to have a wife as long as she is alive?
Yea, to have one.
Oh, thou good fellow, hath he not one already?
He hath so, but I fear me that this marriage is not of any long continuance.
God grant it be so, if it be for Bacchus' commodity. But how should I believe this to be so, Parmenio? Parmeno, tell me.
It needeth not to speak it. Ask not this question.
Verily, for that cause I could cease to ask, but it might not come abroad and be openly known. As God be my help, I entreat you not to tell me, therefore, that I may disclose this thing, but that quietly may rejoice with myself.
You shall never speak in so good a season as that I will, with telling hazard on your credit a codling.
I say not so, Parmeno, as though yon are not more desirous a great deal to tell me this matter than I can wish to know that do ask you.
This woman saith truth, and that's very great faith in me. Well, if you will promise me on your fidelity that you will say nothing, I will tell you.
You come to your old bias. I promise thee not to tell. Speak now.
Hearken then.
I'm here already.
You know, Pamphilus loved this woman Bacchus, then most of all when his father began to entreat him to take a wife and told him these things, which are common to one father as well as another, that he was an old man and he is his only son and had none but him, and that he's desirous to have him in aid and succor to him now in his old age. Pamphilus at the first would not consent unto him, but after that his father did more earnestly urge him. He brought him into a quandary that indeed he knew not whether he might better obey shame or love. At length, through his great opportunity, he brought it to pass. So the old man handfasted his next neighbour's daughter to her. That seemed nothing grievous to Pamphilus until the marriage day itself came. Then after he saw the marriage prepared and there should be no delay of it at all, but he must marry her, then verily he took it so heavily as I believe that Bacchus and Bacchus her own self had been there, he would have taken compassion of him. She would have taken compassion of him. Whensoever he got leisure to be alone, he might talk together with me. He would say, "Oh, Parmeno, I am but a dead man. What have I done? What mischief have I brought myself? I shall not be able to sustain this grief, miserable caitiff that I am.
I pray God confound the Laches for this thy hatred."
That I may make a short tale of a long, he brings home his wife. That first night he had nothing to do with the maid, as also he did as little the night following.
What sayest thou? How could a young man lie in bed together with a young damsel, he being well tippled, keep himself from her? It is not like to be true that you say, neither do I think it true.
I believe that it seems so to you, because nobody comes to you but that he that is in love with you. But now he hath married her against his will.
Well, what followed afterward?
Truly, 3 or 4 days after, Pamphilus took me alone from the rest out of doors, and told me that then also the damsel was a maid for him, and that he hoped to be able, before he had brought her home, to sustain the marriage. But, Parmeno, said he, it is neither honesty for men to be, or profitable to the maid herself, that she be made a laughingstock, whom I have determined in my mind not to keep with me any longer. But rather it is meet I should deliver her again, safe and sound, as I received of her friends.
You show a godly and chaste nature of Pamphilus.
I think it not best for me to tell this to anyone, for it is a proud thing that she should be restored to her father, whom thou canst find no fault withal. But I hope thee will go from me at length, when thee shall know that she cannot tarry me.
What in the mean space did he not go to Bacchus?
Day by day, but as it falleth out, after she saw this estranged from her, by and by she became much more froward and malpert.
In faith, no marvel.
marry, but that matter did most of all separate him from her after he fully knew both himself and her, as also this which was at home, taking the manner and behaviors of both these two for an example. This woman, even as it beseemeth one of a good nature, being shamefast and modest, did bear all the discommodities, despises of her husband, and concealed his rants. Hereupon his affection, being overcome partly by pity of his wife, partly vanquished by the injuries of the woman, doth little by little depart from Bacchus, and set his love on this, because he had gotten one of his own stamp. In the mean space, the old man, kinsman to these, delivered an imbrum that inheritance came by right of law unto these. His father thrust out Pamphilus, loving against his will. He left his wife here with her mother, for the old man had got himself close into the country, and seldom comes he hither into the city.
What hindereth then yet the marriage?
That now usually here. At the first, indeed, they agreed well together for a few days, but then he unfeignedly began to hate Sostrata. Nevertheless, there was no wrangling betwixt them, nor ever any complaining.
What then?
Marry this, if at any time he had come to talk with her, by and by she would quickly get herself out of his sight. She would not look upon him. At the length, when she could not abide him, she feigned herself to be sent of her mother to serve God. She went her ways after that. She had been many days. He willed her to be sent for, but then they alleged a reason of her tarrying, I know not what. He commanded her the second time to be fetched, but nobody sent word back again. After that, they often sent for her. Her friends feigned the woman to be sick. Our mistress forthwith goes unto her to see how she doth, but none gave her entertainment. Now, when it came to the old man's ear, he came hither, therefore, yesterday out of the country, and talked out of hand with Philomena's father about it. As yet, I know not what they have done amongst themselves, but I am very careful to understand what end this will have. Now you know all the matter. I will go on this my journey whither I began to go.
And indeed so will I, for I appointed to talk with a certain stranger, a friend of mine.
God send good luck whatsoever you go about.
Farewell.
And fare you well also, Freitas.
It's good at doing the farewell part. I mean, I've got to say, the Bernard, when it comes to translating bye, see ya, that bit's always fine. Okay, how are we finding again exposition universe? Is it flowing? Is it? Are you losing the will? Is that and is that the text, the translation's fault, or is that just Terence's? Thoughts from the room? Who wants to leap in on this one? Lynn, you look like you almost have thoughts.
Oh, of all of them so far, I'm having the hardest time following this. I mean, initially, young man has a mistress. His father forces him to marry the next door neighbor's daughter. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't consummate the marriage. But then his mistress is pissed off at him for getting married. So that relationship sort of falls apart. So he tries to actually make it a bona fide marriage, but then it's not working out. What? So, yeah, and what old man are we talking about is in the country? Her father, his father? What? Yeah, I don't follow, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I suspect a lot of that is also Terence's fault rather than the translations, but the translation isn't necessarily helping. I mean, I always sort of pick out the little lines sometimes are better indicators. He hath so, but I fear me that this marriage is not of any long continuance. It's almost there. It almost works. You can see what they're striving for, but it's not quite landing. Lynn.
Too many pronouns. It's like too many he and she, and he finally gives the bride a name. I guess that's Sostrata, but if he'd given her a name earlier, it would have been clearer. So I mean, like, more names and fewer he's and she's.
Which is the kind of invisible mending that we might do in in a production anyway.
Yeah.
It is one of these problems because especially when you've got a number of certain kind of characters who you're not necessarily going to see on stage very much because of the nature of the original staging conceit as to who you can and cannot have on stage. Other thoughts about the flow of the language and is this a viable text? How viable do we feel it is as a translation? Eric?
Well, I have to admit, I got lost halfway through like one of those long speeches. I had no idea who I was talking about because it was, well, the wife and then these and then this and then that and then I had no idea who I was talking about. So I was kind of basically what Lynn was saying. It's like, what? Yeah.
That seemed nothing grievous to Pamphilius until the marriage day itself came. Grievous.
What is that?
Again, odd word choices that don't quite land. Aliki.
Yeah, it's not working for me.
Yeah, it's almost there. It's close, but I'm feeling this is a no for me as a performance text again. Again, nowhere near as bad as the Formio we did by the same author. So I'm really interested about whether there's a shift in methodology as he was working through texts, or whether he was half-inching somebody else's work and it wasn't quite the same protocol. It's a really interesting question. Anyone else out there who feels that it's a viable one? I feel we've landed more on a no than a yes here. But anyone in between? Nobody's waving at me. I'm not seeing enthusiastic. We could make this a goer. So I'm feeling this is a no for a return at this time. Anyone who does want to read ahead and read this play in translation or a different translation, or in this one, just once again a warning that as is appropriate in a comedy, or really not appropriate in a comedy, that it does centre on sexual violence once again. So Terence, yeah, there's some issues there. Some issues going back a very long way. Any final thoughts before I close this session? Alan?
I'm just wondering, how many plays did Terence actually write, or did he just write the same one several times?
He wrote the same one several times. I mean, I have various issues with Terence, and it is that he wrote 6 plays, and those 6 are 1. And the 1 is the 6, and the 6 is the 1, and we are all together go cuckoo cuckoo. And I'm forever very confused as to the early moderns' fascination and constant retranslating of Terence, when there's so much good Plautus out there that you could go for, and they don't, and I don't know why. We've only done 1 Plautus in translation, which was mostly good, again slightly problematic, but that's Plautus being, writing for the time he was writing for. Lynn?
Yeah, and there's a line in a Johnson play that suggests that Terence was the prestige writer and Plautus was more down market.
Yeah, Terence was very much I feel he's very attuned to Johnson, actually, in the sense that his plays often open with the audience didn't get it. My opus. Why? Because they don't understand me.
Whereas Plautus is more kind of slapstick and dirty jokes, which is at least our tune, if not necessarily the early moderns.
More perennial.
Yeah. Definitely an influence. Plautus is more an influence, but oddly, he just doesn't seem to get the publishing history that Terence did. So, that's it for this one. We think it's pretty firmly a no. So all that remains is to jump to an awkward closing statement from me. So all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading of Terence in English. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.